Welcome back to Reimagine Nourishment, a radical rethinking of what truly feeds you. I'm Dr. Carol Talbot, and in this episode, we're diving into something extraordinary. What if your DNA is more than a string of genes? What if it's an antenna, a light receiver, a transmitter, a bridge to higher intelligence? Now, if that's true, that means that nourishment isn't only what's on your plate, it's what your DNA can receive. By the end of this episode, I really want you to hold 3 living ideas in your body. First, that DNA is a light receiver. Secondly, food can either polish the lens or scratch it. And thirdly, pranic living. Photons are the language of the universe. So when I say DNA is a light receiver, let's get clear on what that means. At the most fundamental level, the universe communicates in photons, and a photon is the tiniest particle of light, a packet of energy that also behaves like a wave. So you can think of photons like little messengers. They carry brightness and they carry information. They're how the cosmos talks in the language of energy. Now, back in the 1970s, a German biophysicist called Fritz Albert Popp discovered that living cells actually emit light. Using ultra-sensitive detectors, he found that every cell in your body glows with biophotons, photons of light generated within living systems. And these biophotons aren't random. In healthy cells, they're emitted in a coherent rhythm, like a laser beam, highly organized. Yet in sick or stressed cells, the emissions are chaotic, scattered, like static on a radio. In other words, your body is literally broadcasting light signals. Your health isn't only written in chemistry. It's sung in light. Imagine every cell in your body as a lighthouse, sending out beams across the ocean of your tissues. When those beams are clear and steady, the whole coastline is lit and coordinated. But when the bulbs are cracked, flickering, or pointing in random directions, that's when ships crash into rocks. And that's what happens when DNA is distorted. The lighthouses send confusing signals. Your DNA is like the conductor of this photonic orchestra. When DNA is healthy, then the violins, drums, and flutes all play in harmony. Think coherent light, coherent life. When DNA is damaged or distorted, that's when the instruments fall out of tune. The music of your body becomes noise, and every system feels it. That's why research like the phantom DNA effect is so profound. Russian scientists found that even when DNA was removed from a chamber, the photons inside stayed structured, as if DNA had left a light imprint in the field. So let me translate what that really means. It means that DNA doesn't just exist in the physical, it leaves its signature in the energetic. It shapes light, memory, and reality itself. Imagine your life as a film projected on a cinema screen. Light is the projector, DNA is the film, etched with information, structure, timing. If the film is scratched or warped, then the whole movie glitches. The sound is off, scenes are distorted, colors are dull. Now, you don't fix the movie by shouting at the screen. You clean the film and tune the projector. In other words, repair the DNA film, refine the light you receive, and then the whole entire experience changes. Health, mood, clarity, perception, and purpose. Or think of your body as a radio. Food, water, light, breath, environment, they all act on your tuning dial. When that dial is coated in gunk, like chemical residues, emotional stress, electromagnetic static, you just can't lock onto a clean station. What you hear is noise, and then you crave louder and louder inputs to feel or hear anything. When you de-gunk the dial and retune, that's when the signal snaps into focus. And that signal is prana, which is source energy, and your DNA is like the receiving coil. So if photons are the universal messengers, and biophotons are how your body broadcasts and organizes them, then DNA is the antenna and tuner. It codes for proteins, but it also receives, stores, and transmits information in light, which leads to the uncomfortable truth. If DNA is a light receiver, then much of what is called food today acts like static in the system. Processed foods, chemical residues, toxic additives, they don't nourish your DNA. They distort its ability to receive light. So let's move to liquid crystal biology and why it changes the game. If you've ever seen a liquid crystal display, maybe on your phone or digital watch, you know a small voltage changes how light passes through it. Much of your body, such as DNA, cell membranes, cytoskeleton, structured water, all of those exhibit liquid crystal behavior. That means small changes in charge or pH level, light exposure, and geometry can all dramatically alter how information flows. Now, states of coherence, such as breath, meditation, sunlight, nature, or stillness, they all change the optical, electrical landscape in which DNA lives, and DNA responds. So let's take a moment to pause and feel it. So if you're in the right space or place as you listen to this, then go ahead and close your eyes. And as you do that, imagine the double helix in one of your cells, not as a flat textbook image, but as a living spiral, subtly glowing. See the light softening around it. And with every inhale, a wash of clarity, like sunlight through water, moving through the helix. And with every exhale, imagine static leaving your field. Imagine things like chemical noise, emotional noise, mental noise. It all unknots and drains away each time you exhale. And as you continue to do that, just notice how quickly your body knows what coherence feels like. Because that sensation is your receiver warming up. If DNA is a light receiver, then the first question that has to be asked is this: what happens when the very things you put into your body act like static on the line? Ultra-processed foods, artificial additives, pesticides, microplastics, heavy metals, rancid seed oils. They make you gain weight or clog your arteries, but that's surface level. On a deeper level, they interfere with the most sensitive instrument you own, your DNA. So think of DNA like a pristine crystal radio coil. When it's clean, it hums with cosmic resonance. Yet every bite of processed junk is like splashing mud on that coil, and it doesn't matter how much signal the universe is sending. If your tuner is clogged, all you get is noise. And biology confirms this. Chemical residues and processed sugars drive oxidative stress, a biochemical storm of free radicals. And these unstable molecules attack DNA, breaking strands, mutating bases, and interfering with repair mechanisms. So every time DNA is damaged, the light projector of your body becomes a little more scratched. And if repair pathways are overwhelmed, which happens when you're constantly bombarded with toxins, the film glitches permanently. Researchers estimate each of your cells suffers tens of thousands of DNA lesions per day. Now, normally your body can repair them, but only if it's not drowning in toxic inputs. Food isn't just chemical, it's energetic. Every carrot, every grain of rice, every glass of water carries the frequency of how it was grown, how it was harvested and prepared. When you ingest that, you merge with it. If your food is factory produced under fluorescent lights, sprayed with glyphosate and packaged in a plastic, what frequency do you think you're receiving? Compare that to food grown in the sunlight, nurtured in living soil, and harvested with care. One is coherent light, and the other is fractured static. And that's why traditions around blessing food mattered. It wasn't superstition. It was a conscious act of imprinting coherence into what you eat, what you consume. Have you ever taken a photograph through a lens smeared with oil? The scene's still there, but the image is blurry, distorted and dark. And that's what most modern diets do to DNA. They smear the lens of light reception. Now compare that to polishing the lens, and suddenly everything sharpens. Colors are vivid, details emerge and clarity returns. Now that's what happens when you clean your inputs and restore DNA's ability to receive coherent light. And here's where it gets even more disruptive. When DNA is distorted, your cells literally cannot receive energy properly. So even though you're eating, the signal isn't clear, which means your body keeps sending the message, "We're starving, feed me more." So that's why so many people live in this loop of constant hunger, snacking, cravings. They're not lacking calories, they're lacking coherent light. In other words, the receiver has been detuned. So here's the pivot, here's the flip. If distorted food leads to distorted DNA, then nourishment must be more than calories. It has to be about clarity of signal. And it's this that opens the door to a radical possibility. What if you could nourish yourself directly from light, bypassing the static of the modern food chain? Now that's the path of pranic living, and it's where we go next. If you take only one thing from this episode, let it be this. Your DNA is not fixed, it's responsive. It can be damaged, yes, and it can also be repaired, regenerated, and reactivated. Every single day, your DNA experiences tens of thousands of breaks and errors. UV light, chemical toxins, stress hormones, even normal metabolic activity. All of it places strain on the delicate double helix. Now, if you were a machine, that much damage would mean instant breakdown. But the good news is you're not a machine. You're designed with a DNA repair system that's breathtakingly sophisticated. Enzymes patrol the genome, snipping out damaged bases, restitching broken strands, and restoring integrity. Think of it like cosmic editing, with a cosmic editing suite running 24/7. Now here's the catch. That repair system only functions well when your inner environment is coherent. So when you bombard your body with processed foods, chronic stress, lack of sleep, what happens is you overwhelm the repair crew. They just can't keep up. So errors accumulate, mutations form, and the film of your reality becomes scratched. And that's why DNA regeneration matters. Because when you restore the receiver, you don't just prevent disease, you open the doorway to higher perception. You open the doorway to vitality. And you also open the doorway to more expanded levels of consciousness. So how do you give DNA the conditions it needs to regenerate? And this is where the concept of pranic living, nourishment beyond physical food, this is where pranic living comes in. And you can think of it as a spectrum, not an all or nothing leap. First of all, there's energy clarity. So eating clean, coherent food, minimizing toxins, and maybe practicing fasting cycles. This reduces the static and gives the DNA repair team some breathing room. Next would be cellular energy upgrades, practices like sun gazing, breath work, meditation, and grounding. They all increase photon absorption and melatonin production. Because remember, if you listened to the last podcast, you learnt that melatonin isn't just for sleep. It actually regulates over 100 DNA repair genes, and it acts as a master antioxidant. Experienced meditators have actually been shown to have 500% higher melatonin levels. So that means they're directly boosting DNA repair. Something else to consider would be pranic infusion. Now at this stage, energy begins to come directly from light, breath, and structured water in the body. Dr. Gerald Pollack's research on the fourth phase of water shows how water in your cells absorbs light, storing it as energy that fuels biological processes. So DNA bathed in this structured water becomes more stable and less prone to distortion. And of course there's source nourishment. There's been rare masters like Prahlad Jani who lived decades without conventional food or water, sustained by prana. And I'm going to go deeper into this breatharian path in a future episode. But for now, know that it's not about deprivation. It's about complete resonance with the light field. Your DNA repair system is like a team of engineers working in a power plant. If the plant is flooded with toxic waste, then the engineers spend all their time mopping up spills. They can't do upgrades. They can barely keep the lights on. But clear away the waste, restore clean energy flows, and suddenly they're free to reinforce the structure, install new technology, and future-proof the system. Now that's what pranic living does. It clears the static and it upgrades the power plant. There's also another piece here. DNA is also the bridge to memory and consciousness. When DNA is coherent, it repairs your body as well as restoring your access to your multidimensional self. It tunes you into the frequencies of intuition, creativity, and even superhuman abilities. And this is why the masters of the Far East documented over a century ago. This is why they could demonstrate phenomena like walking on water or manifesting huge feasts and banquets out of thin air. Their DNA wasn't running on junk signals. It was fully lit, fully tuned. So here's the invitation for you. Rather than think of nourishment as what fills your stomach, think of it as what restores your DNA's brilliance. Every time you meditate or fast, spend time in sunlight, or choose clean, coherent foods, you're polishing the film, clearing the radio dial, and repairing the receiver that connects you to a higher intelligence. And the more you do that, the less dependent you become on the old paradigm of eating for survival, and the more open you become to nourishment from the field itself. So this episode has explored DNA as a light receiver, how food can distort its signal, and how practices like meditation, sunlight, and structured water support repair. And let's just zoom out for a moment. DNA is not just a code for proteins, it's a transducer, meaning it converts energy and information from one form to another. So on one side, it handles biology, cell division, repair, metabolism. On the other side, it resonates with fields of information, with consciousness itself. When DNA is distorted, you don't just get physical symptoms, you lose access to higher states of awareness. It's like a blocked internet connection. When DNA is coherent, suddenly your bandwidth opens, intuition sharpens, creativity flows, your perception expands. And this is why regenerating DNA is about more than simply health and longevity. It's about remembering who you are beyond this physical form. So what can you do right now to restore your DNA's light reception? First, think about intermittent fasting, because even short fasting windows reduce oxidative stress and give DNA repair crews space to work. Then there's meditation and breath work, which elevates melatonin and coherence, both of which directly activate DNA repair genes. And sunlight exposure, and not simply just for vitamin D, because photons from the sun energize the structured water around your DNA, stabling its function. And then there's structured water intake itself, spring water, hydrogen-rich water, or practices that enhance endogenous water production, like dry fasting. And endogenous water is your own natural living water, and I'll explore that in a later episode. You may also want to think about putting water in a glass bottle and energizing it by putting that glass bottle in the sun for a moment. And of course, clean, coherent food, fresh, living, organic, food that carries the frequency of light and not static. So none of this is about restriction. It's really about creating an environment where your DNA can shine again. Think of your DNA like the receiver on a satellite dish, and if it's rusted, dented, covered in dust, the signal's going to be weak and distorted. If you polish it, realign it, and suddenly it locks onto the transmission, crisp, clear, powerful. And that's what regeneration feels like. DNA is your doorway, and when you polish that doorway through repair and regeneration, you reconnect with the field of intelligence that's always available. That's pranic nourishment. So the question to carry forward is this: what are you feeding your DNA? Static or light? If this episode stirred something in you, then I invite you to read my full book called Reimagine You, Bioregenesis of the DNA Blueprint Through Source Feeding. That book is available on all major book platforms, including Barnes & Noble, including Amazon, or you can order it from your local bookstore. There's also a free ebook called Reimagine Nourishment, and you can just send me a message and I will send you the link for that. So this is Reimagine Nourishment, and I'm Dr. Carol Talbot.